time for another round of Brandy. Candid conversations over cocktails about all things brand with your hosts, Reilly Newman and Scott Saunders, the brand developers behind Motif Brands.
Well, we are back. Today we're going to be talking about egos. Reilly, it's about time we had a heart-to-heart chat. Yours is getting a little out of hand.
This is it.
No. We want to talk about a phrase that we've kind of termed like a trophy brand or trophy business. You know, obviously having a trophy brand is like one that's award-winning. It's worthy of being recognized, worthy of being appraised and heralded for greatness, for success.
Yeah, trophies, awards, all that is awesome, especially when you achieve things and you have a third party or someone else really kind of acknowledging you for that. That's amazing. That's worth celebrating. But we're talking about something a little different.
We desire affirmation and self-worth. It's why we probably follow and root on our favorite sports teams for their one more Super Bowl ring or whatever pennant, and why we are endeared by the stories of Olympian medalists, you know, attaining their dream of getting a gold medal and all their achievements for that, and why we like to celebrate things that are worthy of being celebrated. There's nothing wrong with that inherently.
Yeah, until ego gets involved and it starts to poison it.
That kind of mentality of kind of feeding the ego can get out of hand really quick. And I think all of us have people in our lives that have big egos.
Yes, very big heads, and everything in life is about them and them alone.
And so what we notice, and we see this a lot too for us at Motif, because we're in the wine region of Central Coast California, and so we see a lot of new wineries being started up, or little plots of land being purchased and vineyards being planted and stuff. And a lot of it is by people that we come to find are, they start a little boutique winery. And a lot of times it's successful people that have run a business, and this a winery or something else like another small business kind of becomes a pet project for them.
And it's worse because it's not even like a hobby where there's enjoyment. It really is just ego and focused on this trophy. There's not even enjoyment like with a hobby where you don't care about your ego. You're just doing it for the heck of it.
For the same reason we have the term trophy wife. I think there's a situation where we end up getting these trophy businesses. The businesses are they're small ventures and or purchases by an owner that are really their only sole purpose is to just kind of inflate their ego, to give them something to boast about, have their friends come and show it off, and kind of that's what its existence is. We've seen this, and we know that they're out there, right?
Yeah.
You see that a lot too, Riley, with like celebrities and stuff too.
Right. Yeah, and I feel like there's a fork in the road. Is that the healthy version of this is is an entrepreneur, someone's starting a business, they have their heart in it, they're passionate about it, they're really taking this thing to the next level. And then on the other side of that, you have someone where their heart's not really in it. It may have been like this like dream or fantasy they had of, I really want to have my own product one day or this. And it's a want, not so much that they're in love with the process of doing it or in love with actually providing the value. They just want to be able to, like you said, put it on the shelf, point at it and go, oh yeah, that's my whatever. That's my alcohol brand or that's my cosmetic brand. And you see this especially with social media and influencers now where you have so many products just coming to market of, this influencer who has 1 million followers, they just launched this product. And they're almost seeing the market or the trend and going, okay, tequila is going to blow up or whatever it is. I need to start a tequila brand. And then you have like Kendall Jenner rolling out a tequila brand that actually is now being sued because it copied a lot of the aesthetic and design of the brand from an existing tequila brand. And so then even there, it's like the proof's in the pudding where there wasn't this creative entrepreneurial like aspect or like force behind it of going, hey, I'm going to start something and it's going to be unique and different.
I have a dream for this. I want to go someplace. I want it to be successful.
And it's just like having it for the sake of having it versus going, no, I'm actually going to provide value and do this thing properly, which, you do have like Rihanna where she did the Fenty beauty brand and that thing has actually been successful and provided value in the cosmetics market. So it's like, it's not a blanket statement for all things, but I think it does come down to like that heart behind it. And like Scott was saying with the ego of, okay, is this going to receive acknowledgement and reward from the public and the market going, hey, that's actually a great product. Thank you for providing that.
Yes.
Or are you crowning yourself and going, okay, this is my trophy.
Yes. And so for lack of a better term, I think for the rest of this episode, we're going to be referring to trophy businesses. And this is kind of what the stigma is, what we're trying to position certain businesses that are out there that have been built up or were created with not the best intent, with selfish intent, really.
That's a good point. Selfish businesses do not last at all.
But I think some of these guys, people want a trophy brand. They think of brands. They go, yeah, I want to create this big brand, and it's their business and their brand. So they want that trophy. They start that trophy business. But the point of this is what we're trying to get at is for the next couple of reasons that we're going to discuss. Is that it's never going to reach the potential to be a trophy brand, right? That just won't become an award-winning or worthy of praise brand because it's a trophy business.
So, in other words, trophy business does not equal trophy brand. So, what's going to be the first point that you have, Scott?
So, the first one really is that there's no direction. With the trophy business, there's no direction, and if you've listened to us gab in the past, or if you've read our book, we love using analogies to talk about branding. One of them, the more common that we've used, is like a ship. You want the business to grow somewhere, and where are you pointing it? So it's kind of a point on the horizon, and then it allows you to navigate stormy seas. It allows you to bear the ship or business towards that direction.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is that if the focus of the business isn't for the sake of the business or brand, it's for self, right? It's a trophy business. Then what ends up happening is the focus is not on the horizon, it is on the ship,
which is just way too inward looking. It's like what you call like myopic, is when you're just nearsighted and you're so focused on yourself and you're not actually seeing the bigger picture. You're not seeing the long-term vision or even imagination for that matter. You're just kind of so inward looking and selfish that the self-focus just leads to no direction at all. The myopic will kind of just start to decay and eat away, where you're so focused, like Scott's saying, on the ship, is that you're not looking at the route, you're not looking at where you need to go or what needs to happen to get there. It's just kind of you're dead in the water at that point.
The focus is where it's at currently. Its focus is almost stationary because it's all about self, and it's all about, those in close proximity, look how gorgeous my ship is, blah 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 blah. It doesn't matter whether it's going anywhere or it can't even leave port because it's not seaworthy, right? So that idea that there's no direction, there's no real direction for the business, and because it serves the purpose, the ill-fated purpose of just serving the owner,
and I think
as a boasting point or something.
Related to that, it's like if there's no direction, there's no drive. Because just like in a ship, you need a heading, you need a North Star, you need your where you're going and how you're going to get there, or you're entering into the abyss of the sea with a lot of different, waves and rocks you could hit and all kinds of things that you have no idea how to avoid or what you're doing. And so there's not going to be that drive because you don't have the direction. Your staff's not going to be on board. You're just kind of floating and going around and going in circles for the most part. And so it's just kind of it's a horrible way to first step into this kind of fantasy of entrepreneurial, journey.
Yeah.
It's like someone wanting to be a sailor and going, well, I'm just going to get a boat and I'm going to start sailing and have a boat. And then I can point at the boat and say, I have a boat.
Yeah. Do you sail? Yes. There's my boat. Right.
I'm a sailor. I'm sailing. That's a quote from What About Bob?
Look, I'm sailing. Oh my gosh. So basically, no direction. There's no direction with the trophy business. And then another aspect is the trophy businesses fall into the pit of using the wrong filter. We've talked about how business is the transactional part and branding is that relational, right, to the audience, to the market space. And part of that and the main function of brand is perception. How the audience relates to you and through everything that the business does, all the touch points, everything about the messaging, the tone, all that stuff, it all relates to it. So when a business has to make decisions, we are big proponents of applying that brand filter, kind of like a set of glasses that you put on. And when you're looking at what you're going to be doing as a business, you're putting through that filter of how is this going to affect my brand?
Right. And it's like, yes, how it will impact the perception of your business, aka your brand, but also like how would your brand go about addressing this? How would it approach, this messaging or this ad, filtering it that way as well?
Making sure that everything about your brand and the filter of your brand is to make sure things have clarity, that they are consistent, and that you're doing it in a creative or distinctive way to make you stand out. And that's really where you can tap into the power of brand. But if you have the wrong filter on, if the small business is making decisions based on the whims, the whim of the owner, right? If it's all about self, so there's things that don't make sense, decisions being made that don't make sense from a brand standpoint, from a business standpoint.
Yeah, it's like the tail wagging the dog to a certain degree, where it's like no longer is there true order to these decisions being made, but these gaps that are deemed viable by the owner are then being filled. He's making the decisions and just doing it for putting another feather in his cap, and it's all knee-jerk reactions. There's no strategy. There's very little involvement, and it's just it's the tail wagging the dog rather than proper order to a business actually becoming successful.
Again, it's never going to achieve that great brand because brand needs those things that we identified when you have your right filter on. Have the wrong filter on, and ignoring the audience, you're gonna suffer.
And it's not to say that a leader could have a vision for, hey, this is how the future is going to be. This is how that's different. That's like what Steve Jobs or Henry Ford or any of these, or like the Spanx lady, what she did, whereas like she had a vision of something that was a need in the market. She was addressing that, and then doing things that almost did that weren't they were almost counter to what the market was doing. This is different because this is about like what your personal preferences are, what you think looks good, what you think. It's not based off a vision or this destination. And so kind of applying this filter and the first point of having no direction, it's like it's one thing to start a business and to want to create a brand and really serve the audience. It's another thing to have your ego, because like we always talk about, it's like a great brand is empathetic. It's thinking about the audience, thinking about their pain points, what they're aspiring for, and everything that we've talked about so far is pretty much like the polar opposite, where you're only thinking about yourself. Oh man, I really want this to be this color, or I'd really like for it to be like this. This has always bothered me, and that could be true in some instances where you have people who connect with that, but really in this with an ego or trophy brand, it's like you're just creating this thing for your own. For the sake of having it. And it becomes really weird because it's like, it's your own fantasy and you like the thought of it. And I get this a lot with people who ask me, Reilly, how do I start a business? How do I go about this? How should I do this? And it's like, I'm going to tell them like, oh, it's easy, 3 easy steps to starting a business. And you
need to have a different voice whenever you're talking about people that ask you like really stupid questions, a little higher and squeakier, a little mouse-like voice. And then you answer with a more fatherly
well,
intonation.
Sit down over here.
Well, sit down, lad, and I'll tell you.
And so they'll ask me, how do I start a business? I really was, and I can tell there's 2 types of people. I can tell right away. You have the true pure blood entrepreneur who's like, no, I'm hungry for this. I want to provide value. I want to play the game. They're hungry for the game and they want to play it because it's a process. It's not this one and done. And then you have the other people where they like the idea of having a little business, playing entrepreneur, and being able to point at it and go, oh yeah, I'm an entrepreneur, or I have this little business. And it's cute for a while until the real pain of actually having a business kicks in and they realize, okay, the honeymoon's over. I don't just get to point at this thing anymore. I have to actually make money. I have to actually do taxes. I have to actually provide value to the market, or the market's going to reject you. And to me, this is very similar, where someone who just wants to play entrepreneur or play shop owner, they'll enter it for that idea or that fantasy so they can point at it, versus someone who is actually truly hungry and they're wanting to provide. And that to me is like very, very similar to this, where you have the people who, I want to start a little brand, or I want to be able to point to this thing and have a trophy on my shelf and not actually really create anything that's providing value.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think it's really like we talked about the how, which is, the lack of direction. The direction gives you the how, right? Or I'm sorry, the where. And then the why is more the filter. Why are you doing these things? Because you're answering those internal questions because you're filtering it through the brand. filter. And then the last one is more the how. It's the strategy. And the problem with trophy business is they lack strategy because there's no need for strategy because its sole purpose, again, is to inflate and puff up and exist solely to be, yeah. And we've even seen, like, I know a couple, businesses that they're barely profitable, and it doesn't matter because money is not really an issue. And it's more about just making it look good. Doesn't matter whether, it's doing well in the market space, whether it's has happy customers or not. It looks good on paper, and it looks good to friends and those peers that the owner maybe is trying to impress with even having this type of business in this type of market sector, right?
Right. And to me, it's just like, it's such a red flag. It's a massive, massive red flag to me.
Everything from a pickleball paddle brand to alcohol to things. And I think one of the things too is what helps build a successful business and what helps then in turn hopefully build a successful brand is that there is passion and intent in why that specific business was started. Right. If you have a small business that is service based, it's because you're good and talented and knowledgeable at a certain trade, and that's what you want to do and receive compensation for that. If it's a product, there's a reason you're developing that product. Maybe it was you discovered a solution to something that a problem that you've always encountered, but no one provided a solution for. So you develop a solution for that. Or it is in this space that if you run marathons and you decide, you know what, I'm going to design a better shoe, and you decide you're going to create a small shoe company that is dedicated to the marathon run or whatever it is, right? Yeah. There's passion behind that.
Yeah. And I feel like to that point, the lack of strategy then leaves this like chasm where then it's filled with knee-jerk reactions to what's trendy in the market. You have, let's say you built up a great social following, you have 1 million followers, and then you go, oh, tequila's hot right now, I'm going to start a tequila brand, or this is hot right now, I'm going to start whatever pickleball brand or whatever. And so then you have this very tactical knee-jerk reaction, and that's what even this huge podcast called Call Her Daddy, the girl's name I think is Alex, she is launching this beverage brand, and you can tell through and through the beverage, the aesthetic, everything about it matches what the big YouTube star Logan Paul or whatever his name is, he did the whole Prime drink, and that thing is blowing up. And you could tell that they're trying to almost mimic the success of that.
It's like a recipe.
Yeah, and it makes
steps.
no sense. It's like why would someone drink a drink from her? She has no grounding in this area. It's completely satellite to what she talks about, and it would make more sense. I was even playing. I was like, okay, what podcaster would make sense? I was like, okay, Andrew Huberman, who talks about health, and he's a professor. He's all about neuroscience and crazy stuff. It's like it would make sense if he made some drink that had electrolytes or some like supplement or something where someone could, there's a connection there. That makes sense. And it's his area of expertise versus him launching, he's doing like pickleball or something. Yeah. It'd be so weird. And I think with technology and people being able to start different businesses, it's great. It's healthy for the economy, but it's also created this weird dilemma where then you do have things that are just too easy for people to get into, where they have no expertise at all. Yeah. Starting a winery, starting a clothing brand or whatever it is. And it's like, it leads to this trophy mentality of just letting it exist for the sake of existing. Yeah. And that's a problem.
And we're recognizing too that for most of you guys listening, this is not you. We're not talking to the audience right now. I hope there's not a whole bunch of you that have trophy businesses and are really that egocentric. But the idea is the same thing. Because I think it's a matter of with anything with business and brand is it's always willing to look at yourself in the mirror, right? And so if we're just bringing this up so that even if this doesn't apply to you, you will be constantly looking in the mirror and making sure that your motives are right, that as you're running your small business or thinking about business or just into branding, it's about looking at the motives, looking at the whys behind it, right? Because that's going to determine whether you have direction, whether you have solid strategy for brand, whether you have you're building the business or moving it forward with the right filter to make sure that your brand is consistent, has clarity, and is distinctive. These are the things that are going to allow you, wherever you're at in your business, and we're going to assume that all of you have non-trophy businesses, right, that are listening, that these are still the steps and things to make sure, right? We've highlighted what a trophy business will not have and why it cannot, based on its nature, why it cannot do well in these areas, which then lead them to not having a successful brand. So our hope and intent is that you will take these and use these as reminders to make sure that you're doing all these right things. Because that's what I said. These recipes for success, and that's what's hard about branding. There's baseline principles, right? But there's always things that there's always variances. There's always brands that break the rules of branding, the rules that we preach on the mountaintop for. There's brands out there that break those, but are still thriving and doing well. There's anomalies in the market, right? But there's no recipe. Follow this, and you'll do that. Because if everyone was doing it, everyone would be at the same pace. And brand is all about being memorable, distinctive, right? Standing out. If everyone's standing out, then no one's standing out. So that's why there is the answer to why isn't there a great recipe for success for branding? There isn't a step-by-step follow this recipe to the hilt. Right. And so it's following these principles. Everyone's going to have different application of these principles, but trophy brands are obtainable as long as you don't have a trophy business.
Right. I think it's a good wrap up to the episode.
That was a poignant period at the end of my sentence.
That was very, very well wrapped with a bow on top.
Well, good, because I just finished my drink, so it's time for turn off the mic and pour another one. So, thank you guys for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Brandy, and we look forward to connecting with you next time. Cheers.